For a very long time, I've been building magical little worlds inside jars. Terrariums that thrive, glow, and grow quietly, almost like a forest held in your hands. Today, I'm going to show you how to make a truly self-sustaining terrarium. No rocks, no charcoal, no nonsense. Just balance, beauty, and nature doing what it does best. I'm Jan, and if you've ever been told you need drainage layers to make a healthy terrarium, I'm here to challenge that idea. Last week, I shared with you my little trip into the mountains with my family, and that I was painting and I taught a workshop painting. And whenever I'm somewhere where I can forage for moss, I do. There's an abundance of moss here on these mountains of West Virginia. And I knew I had several projects I wanted to accomplish. I've got a couple terrarium lamps that I made at least 6 years ago and haven't opened them since, and they are ready to be redone. And I want to teach you exactly what I do to create the ecosystem that is a good terrarium that basically becomes carefree. It will struggle every now and then because plants do die, just like everything else in nature. So it's not exactly carefree, but because it's a lamp, it gets everything it needs, and you really don't have to do anything to it. So when I'm foraging for moss, I like to bring some plastic bags because it's a good little makeshift terrarium without any cost and lightweight and travels easily. I just put the moss in the bottom and I spread them out, and then I put a little tie, a loose tie in the top and cinch it tight so that it keeps its moisture inside, but it still can breathe. The reason why I love the moss on this mountainside is it's because it's button moss, and it comes in these cute little buttons and they just look so adorable in terrariums. So let's take this back and we'll get started on how to construct your terrarium. Let's start out with the things you will need. Well, not necessarily. You don't need all these things. But I'll tell you what I use, and you can get by with much less. A little brush. This is just to get rid of any dirt you want to get rid of. Some scissors. They don't have to be this pair. Some tweezers is helpful, and something to dig and something to move some dirt. Plants, of course. You can buy them at your local box stores or plant shops. Rocks or shells are also helpful, and this little ceramic deer. If you can find something ceramic, it's ideal. This is a little fox I have in a different terrarium. This one is overgrown, so I'm using my scissors to go in and cut some cuttings that I'm going to put into the new terrariums. You can see they have their own roots already, so we'll just be adding these into the soil and they will root in just fine. Now the moss. I like to lay out all my moss just like if I was painting, and I'd lay out my palettes of color. I like to know my choices. The container I'm using is a jar that is also a lamp. And these two I have not opened in at least 6 years. So we're going to clean out everything because I made these with rocks and with charcoal. And since doing that, I have learned after making many terrariums that you don't need that layer. And in fact, I believe it just takes away precious room for the roots to grow. So we clean the jars and get them dry, and we're ready to make the terrarium. What you want to do is put some soil about 2 or 3 inches, depending on how much room you have and how big your plant is. You want to give that plant enough room to grow. These ferns are bordering on too big, but it's all that I had. I'm cutting this plant to put it straight into the soil, and because it will be enveloped in its own little ecosystem and moist soil, it should root in just fine. What I like to do is place the plants and then surround them by the moss in and around to create little hills and valleys. And this is where the rocks come in really handy. I like to put them scattered amongst the moss to create little pathways or little breaks in color. And don't forget about the cute little deer. It goes perfect right there. Let's talk about watering. You want to make sure your soil is moist and water your plants the night before so they have plenty of time to drain. You don't want to overwater your plants. That is the secret. Let's talk a little bit more about watering and your ecosphere. You can use a tool like this which will tell you the water level of your plant, which will help you out before you water it. You can also get a little watering bottle that can pinpoint water, which is very helpful to not overwater. But don't worry, you can regulate your water levels by doing a simple test. If your terrarium has moisture, it'll show up on the glass and it'll be misty and foggy. A little bit is okay, but if you have too much, what you want to do is monitor it in the first couple weeks or days, and if it has too much moisture, open it up and let it air out for a couple hours, maybe even overnight. And then put your top back on and keep doing this until you don't have as much condensation on the outside. And then you know that your terrarium is getting the right amount of moisture. And once you create that ecosphere inside, it will self-water itself. It'll make moisture, it'll rise, and then it'll fall back down and rain on the plants and the moss. It's pretty brilliant how it works. Decorating with moss. Sometimes we can overcomplicate things, and I'm here to give you permission to keep it simple. I have these beautiful cloches, which we are going to decorate with moss in the simplest way I know how, which is just adding some fresh soil and adding moss. And it's that simple. And these will be so maintenance free. And if you're anything like me, these simple moss only terrariums will be your favorite, and they will bring you joy every time you look at them. When we bring nature indoors, we're not just decorating, we're reconnecting. A terrarium is more than moss and soil in a jar. It's a tiny world where calm lives. In our busy lives, these little glass gardens remind us to slow down, to notice the green, to create with our hands, and to care for something quiet and alive. They ask for little, but they give us a lot. Beauty, stillness, a gentle kind of magic. Creating these small ecosystems is a way of grounding ourselves, of turning our homes into sanctuaries, and remembering that peace can grow, even in the smallest places. If you'd like to see more of what I create, visit janlakey.com, where you'll find prints of my original paintings and soon a collection of original Backwards Beauty pieces will be released. Sign up for my newsletter to get first dibs when new art becomes available. And as a thank you, you'll receive my 2025 studio supply list, a curated guide of all my favorite tools, paints, and material. Let's keep growing beauty, one small, quiet world at a time.